Still overwhelmed by the hero remix? Then you must watch this one-of-a-kind guide.
7K Dreamer, please.
Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. So it's been 2 weeks since the big reboot of Seven Knights and every hero has since been remade. Some have been remade twice. There are so many changes and you may not have the time to go through everything. So in this video, I'm going to be giving you many summarized charts and classifications of heroes and various effects, which you can screenshot and refer to anytime. I will also talk about some interesting findings too. I know the revamped skill filter in the game does a good job, but it is actually still troublesome to see everything at a glance and some parts are still lacking. Before we begin, I would like to say this video took a lot of effort, so I would greatly appreciate if you could hit the subscribe and like button. And honestly, if Netmarble hits us with a remake wave again 2 weeks later, then some parts of this video are going to be inaccurate, so this is my disclaimer here. So I have broken down the chart into 3 main groups of heroes: special heroes, awakened normal heroes, and unawakened normal heroes. Let's start with buffs, and the first will be crit rate, which is a highly important stat. I have split the classifications into heroes who buff themselves and heroes who help the entire team. And you will be surprised that there are so many special heroes who enjoy an increased crit rate buff for themselves via the exclusive item. Do refer to the top left corner for the meanings of the symbols. As for normal heroes, many of them also buff crit rate for themselves overall. All this suggests that these heroes could have a little better output in terms of damage. However, the more important group of heroes are those that buff the team. So for special heroes, we actually have only 2 heroes who do so, and they are Clemith and Alicia. I have also put down clearly how much buff they provide, so it really makes your life a lot easier. While Clemith is able to buff using her active skill, Alicia's buff comes from her awakened skill. But on closer analysis, these buffs really can't compare to what awakened Ariel and Lina provide. Not only are the buffs greater, but Lina herself also provides a 12 turn increase, which is also the reason why she is used a lot now with Shane for crit rate increase. So 2 key heroes here, awakened Lina and awakened Soy. Soy also provides a convenient 20% buff via her passive, so you save a turn. So 2 key heroes here, Awakened Lina and Awakened Soy. At this point, I would like to say that whether it is a self buff or a team buff, whichever buff is greater will override the smaller buff. So if your hero's self buff is greater than the team buff, that hero will not enjoy the team buff and vice versa. Higher crit rate leads to higher chances of dealing critical damage, which is the second stat we will look at. Not many heroes enjoy increased crit damage, but if they do, you can be sure that their damage output will be high when geared appropriately. It is important to take note that DPS's Taka and Shane already have self boost for crit damage beyond 100%, so support heroes are not necessary. In fact, only 2 heroes in the whole game now can buff crit damage for the team, and they are Alicia and Lina. Both their buffs do not stack with any self buff beyond 50%. For Alicia, you will need to unlock her exclusive item before being able to have the effect, which is very temporary. Next most important stat is lethal rate. Lethal rate serves to increase the chance of dealing lethal attacks. Likewise, there are many heroes with self boost in lethal rate, whether it is from their passive or exclusive item. And this is important because some of these heroes do require high lethal rate to perform well, especially your DPSs. That said, only 3 heroes are able to buff lethal rate for the entire team, and they are Baijiao, Soy and Rachel. Soy and Rachel actually require you to unlock their exclusive item before having the buff. So technically, Baijiao is the only hero who has ally lethal buff by default. However, that percentage is far too low and pretty useless, unfortunately. Lethal damage is our next stat, and only very few heroes have this buff. In fact, those who do have it for themselves will require their exclusive item to be unlocked. Rachel and Soy are the only 2 heroes who buff lethal damage, and Soy is pretty much a must-have with that immense buff in Guild Dungeon, so both of them are key heroes here. Next, we will look at physical attack increase. These are the heroes who have a physical attack buff for themselves, so make sure you do not use them thinking they will help your team, unlike these heroes who will really help you. Eileen is without a doubt the best physical attack buffer, currently with 50% boost in PvE. Valika offers slightly lesser with her awakened skill, and for the unawakened heroes, 2 of them buff physical attack by increasing flat stats. This is far less ideal, so there's really no point to consider them. With physical attack comes magic attack. At this point, you guys might be thinking, why am I showing heroes who have self buffs if they are not important? The reason is because you need to know who has self buff so as to prevent any duplicate buffing which could not work. Important heroes who provide magic attack increase for the team include Rin and Sylvia. However, both Spina and Sebastian already have a self buff in magic attack where they are used, so Sylvia won't be necessary at all. The next stat is defense, but as you can see here, special heroes are a bunch of selfish twats who do not like sharing defense boosts, leaving it to normal heroes like Hayoung, Helenia and Evan to do that job. The percentages are not very high as well, with Hayoung providing the most. Of course, when Evan Mythical awakens, he could potentially provide more. What about boosting the block rate? Surprisingly, many heroes have their own block rate boost, but very few boost the team, with Karma being the best for it. So tank team users do take note of this. However, this buff only lasts for 4 turns, which is understandable, otherwise a permanent block effect after the reboot is way too broken. Which also makes me feel that this block buff doesn't do that well with the Guardian Ring because the Guardian Ring nullifies all damage for 3 turns anyway, so that only leaves 1 turn of block buff left from Karma. Counter rate, another main stat for heroes, is next. Does anyone still remember Noho? So we have a long list of heroes who have innate counter buffs, but the harsh truth is that only 2 heroes increase counter for the team, with our good old Lee being the only one who has this buff on a passive. One thing you must keep in mind though, that sometimes having an entire team with increased counter rate isn't a good thing, because it can potentially be time wasting if your heroes counter when there is no need to. Nonetheless, Lee is still a good hero to have in your inventory. Now that we have gotten main stat buffs out of the way, we will look at other buffs starting with Evasion. Evasion was a very strong effect to possess before the reboot, and after the changes, only these heroes have the evasion buff. Understandably, there is no hero which increases evasion rate for the team, unlike accuracy. Only 4 heroes provide accuracy increase for the team, and they all provide the same amount, so their usage will depend on the utility of their other skills. Just take note that for Aragorn, his buff is only applied when he uses his Awaken skill, while for Sylvia, she will need her exclusive item. Another stat which was strong is Status Effect Cast Rate. Unfortunately, only 4 heroes have this buff, and it is only for themselves. So just a small piece of advice, these heroes will probably love mythical crit weapons, as well as the cast rate increase trait. Likewise, certain heroes are able to resist status effects better and have individual enhanced resist rates. For Amelia and Aurelie, the buff is only active when they trigger their awaken passives, while the other heroes have it in their default passive. Sometimes some heroes have more bulk because they can resist certain types of damage. These heroes specifically resist only physical attack damage. Is there any hero which can protect the whole team? Unfortunately, no. The counterpart for that is decreasing magic damage received. Only 3 heroes provide it for the entire team, and I would strongly recommend having all 3, Chloe, Velika and Espada, in your inventory because their usage differs. What about heroes who reduce any kind of damage? While there are many heroes who have this self-bulk effect, only Aquila and Helenia are able to provide this to your entire team. And maybe you might now be thinking, why don't we use Aquila for siege defense instead? That's because the rest of her skill set is less superior than Helenia for that mode, so Helenia is preferred. So all those were the most crucial buffs which had to be sorted out. I will move on to debuffs now. For debuffs, there is no division of allies and self anymore. Everything is landed on the enemy, so in the same order we will start with crit rate. It is interesting how Elisha, Clemith and Ariel, who buff ally crit rate, also decrease enemy crit rate, while Aragorn is possibly the best hero here with the effect since it is by default on his passive with no turn-based expiry. Note that I will include the number of enemies which will be affected by the debuff and the duration for all skill-based debuffs. For lethal, have a good laugh, only one hero in the whole game decreases the enemy's lethal rate, and that's Platine, who only decreases it by 10%. A new debuff that came out after the reboot is the ability to decrease enemy speed attack. But I'm not too sure where this can kick into place. It seems we have Karl and Mulan who can apply this debuff, so go test it. Another common debuff to increase your team's bulk would be to reduce the enemy's attack stat. I combined physical attack and magic attack reduction in the same row, Some heroes are only able to reduce either one of them, like Rudy and Nerja for example, while most heroes tend to reduce the overall attack stat of enemies. So with all this clearly displayed, it is easier for you to pick the right hero for your team and need. Next up, we have one of the most important debuffs in the game, defense reduction. This debuff lets you inflict more damage on your enemies. For PvE, you have a few choices: Rachel for Guild Raid, Chloe for Raid, and Sylvia for Guild Dungeon. You need all three to get good scores in each of those respective modes. The other heroes are mainly used in PvP, hence you will see that they have shorter and less dramatic debuff percentages. Then we have Block Rate Decrease, which is yet another familiar and newly important debuff. Only a mere 4 heroes have this debuff, with Kagura providing the greatest, so you definitely want a copy of her. You would have seen me use her in my item rate guide. Block rate decrease can be a very handy debuff, especially now that the reboot places some stress on Shane's crit rate. We can also attempt to decrease counter rate on enemies if their counter attacks are too time wasting. For that, Kirill is the best pick because she applies the debuff passively, unlike the other heroes who land a turn-based active debuff. An interesting and new debuff is the status resist decrease debuff, which is only found on Sylvester and Nox, who strictly only reduce death resist. Sylvester also only applies this debuff on one target, so overall it is still a very negligible debuff right now, but in the future we may have heroes who can apply it to more than just one target. Recovery rate debuff is a less used debuff, but seeing how recovery rate is nerfed after the reboot, this debuff could bring it down further and really be a game changer. You may find this debuff on 5 heroes only, with Colt and Chris applying it from their passives upon entering the match, so you do not need to rely on RNG. The next debuff is also very important, and that is to increase the damage which the enemy receives. For special heroes, Ace still retains this on his passive even though it's only at 10%, and Rachel still has the greatest debuff for PvE. As for normal heroes, Ruri offers the same amount as Ace, but of course in PvE you probably won't use either Ace or Ruri as they are completely outclassed by Chloe, Sylvia and Rachel themselves. Now we will look at actual status effects. I have changed the legend. All status effects are only casted via skills, so I'll be splitting heroes into 2 groups, the ones that cause the status and the ones who provide defense against it. The only difference in the latter is whether a hero provides immunity or resistance to the status effect. For Bleed, we have a surprising lot of heroes who can all cast Bleed. Bleed damage is triggered when your hero gets hit with a basic attack, and Orca and Miho are the 2 heroes who can magnify Bleed damage. There is only one hero who provides resistance, and she is Amelia. Following that, we have Burn. Burn damage is triggered when your hero uses a skill or gets hit with a skill. Sylvester is the only hero who can magnify burn damage. To resist against burn, Lina is a good choice, coupled with burn resistance accessories and status effect resist jewels. Otherwise, for a short-term immunity, you can also consider Rachel and Yui. Another conditional status is Poison, which triggers when your hero uses a basic attack. Only 2 competitive heroes have the ability to land Poison, which by the way will not remove itself over time and will stay on until it is cleansed. Note that Isabella, our lovely guild raid boss, has both Poison and Bleed debuffs, which is why Chloe was used in my run, since she provides so much Poison immunity. Hayong on the other hand, who can also be used in Isabella raid, gives 30% resistance. For the statuses that stop enemies entirely, we have Stun. Again, many heroes can stun, but only Rudy and Charon, who no one will really use, are able to provide a mere 6 turn immunity. Sometimes I like to feel that 6 turns is really nothing much, so it's back to relying on resistance traits. Meanwhile, the situation gets worse for Electrify, with only 3 heroes being able to cast it, and only Victoria legitly providing team immunity, while Carl Heron is selfish as heck. Paralyze becomes a very rare status now, with only 4 heroes being able to cast it, with the main resistance provider being Roro. So many of you can consider keeping 1 copy of Roro just in case the need arises somehow. Freeze is also another one of those statuses that are very exclusive like Electrify, and it makes sense since we only have so few ice related heroes in the game. Interestingly, the heroes who deal Freeze also provide resistance against it. Lina is a special case here, further emphasizing on her all-rounded utility as a hero. Sleep is still exclusive to Clemith and Da Qiao, while Yonhee judges them from afar. Silence is also limited to a handful of heroes, only with Ariel being the main immunity provider for 6 turns. Even Blind has a lot more heroes who can cast it. Hayoung and Elisha are the main resistance providers, though Hayoung probably has a lot more utility as a whole compared to Elisha. Then we have the very trendy death debuff, which still exists on the same heroes as with before the reboot. However, now we have a lot more heroes who have death immunity, with Mercure providing the most, but I believe his stage 1 exclusive item needs to be unlocked for that to exist. So if you want some short-term death immunity, keep a Mercure. The last 2 status effects are Suffocate and Petrify. Suffocate is exclusive to Tara at the moment, and it will pinch off 10% of the enemy's HP whenever they hit or get hit. And only 3 normal heroes still provide Petrify immunity, despite having no hero or boss being able to cast Petrify for the time being. Moving on, we have even more skill effects to cover. I will also briefly talk about their mechanism while using the old legend chart. The first effect I want to talk about is Reflect and Reflect immunity. Reflect is now not only found on Jave and Nerja, but also on Elisha, but she only reflects magic damage. As for Reflect immunity, once again we have selfish heroes and nice ones, so make sure you differentiate between them and use the best, who is actually Aragorn, because his immunity will be available as long as he is alive. The next effect is cooldown increase. This is a useful effect which can prevent your enemy from skilling and effectively wasting his or her turn. I have put down all the targets in ascending order, so it is very clear for you to see who is more beneficial for whichever mode you are crafting for. Are there heroes who provide immunity to this? Definitely. Immunity of cooldown increase is actually really important to prevent your heroes from being locked into doing nothing. So if you do not have a duo which provides immunity, perhaps looking at either one of these heroes will be beneficial. Special note, Awaken Wukong, not Mythical Awaken Wukong, does provide ally team immunity to cooldown increase as well. And then we have the formation change effect. The heroes who can change formation are currently not in the meta, so there isn't a big need to worry about this. In PvE, however, some enemies have the potential to change your formation, and this will greatly affect your PvE scores and damage output, so it is advisable to have Da Qiao or Bidang for immunity. The next effect is a big one, and it is buff duration reduction. Gone are the days when we had to rely on this so much in every battle. Nonetheless, quite a big number of heroes, be it special or normal, still have buff duration reduction effects, even though it is only 1 turn. Again, I have listed all the heroes in ascending order, so you can better consider who is more useful and if they can fit on your team. Note that Yonhee and Kot require their exclusive items in order to have the buff duration reduction effect. So we talked a lot about status effects a while ago, so it is important to actually know which heroes can remove these status effects so that your team remains healthy. Many special heroes have this useful effect, however you will realize that you will either have to unlock their exclusive item or wait for them to use their awakened skill. Khal Heron is the only hero who has debuff cleansing on a regular skill after his exclusive item is unlocked. For normal heroes, cleansing is found on the 2 best healers of the game, Hayoung and Lina. Rook also has a very good cleansing skill as it comes with HP shields, which we will talk about in a while. Another effect with a similar idea of cleansing is the removal of enemy buffs. In this case, it is a helpful effect for you since you can remove all the active buffs added onto your enemies. Unfortunately, only a very limited number of heroes have this, with only 1 special hero who can do AoE cleansing. Awakening gauge reduction is also another helpful effect to delay the onslaught of enemies' powerful awakened skills. We do have a handful of heroes who have this capability, but it is no longer as broken as before since the highest number of targets is only 3, so it doesn't completely wreck your enemy's strategies as you might wish. Next, we have HP conversion. I inserted this effect just because. While these skills do not work on PvE bosses, perhaps somehow they could come in handy for you in other modes if you find any difficulty, so here you go. Then comes Taunt, which I felt was important for sure. Taunt is an effect that draws in enemy attacks onto the hero who has it, and having this helps to protect your other teammates from being targeted, thereby giving them greater survivability. So it is important to know which heroes have this effect because it can alter the dynamics of your team. Ares and Zeke are very popular taunt heroes in PvE so as to protect other essential support heroes from dying too fast. And speaking of greater bulk, we cannot neglect heroes who cast shields. This is once again split into heroes who give only themselves shields and heroes that provide for the whole team. Nia actually provides shields for your team immediately from the start, so that's pretty amazing. I would also strongly recommend Rook and Helena as must-haves at this point, mainly for siege defense. The other heroes are more conditional and would depend on the mode since their skill sets don't exactly make them a must-use. Speaking of shields, why not heal too? This is a very basic role of which heroes have self-healing capabilities and which will heal allies. Again, you see very familiar names popping up such as Hyung and Lina, so I believe at this point you have an idea of which are some must-haves you need. Enough about bulk, what about damage? With the HP stat being scaled to a very high amount now, fixed damage has received quite a bit of attention. So these are all the heroes who can do fixed damage along with the clear note of how many targets their skill hits and how much fixed damage it can deal. Take note for Mercure, I put him here because his explosion damage is also somewhat a fixed damage but based on the number of fallen enemies. Also, Wukong has a special symbol as his fixed damage comes from his effect attack. And the final effect is Exploit Vulnerability. This insane effect was incredibly OP before the reboot because it could be applied on any hero. Now it is relegated to only 4 heroes, with Cult still having it on her passive, while all other heroes only have the effect for certain skills. And with that, we have come to the end of the video. I really hope this video was helpful for you. Don't forget to like and subscribe. With this put down, we can go into greater detail for various team compositions and hero builds. Stay tuned for more guys. Thank you so much and see you!